Today is a special text because it is Transfiguration Sunday, when Jesus is transformed. And we get to see him the way he really is. But I think that this is a miracle in the midst of a bigger miracle. And the bigger miracle is that God has been able to hide himself for so long until he gets to that mountain and he gets to really show them his majesty and his glory. But we need to figure out why. Why did Jesus do what he did? Why did he in that moment show his glory? Why didn't he do it before? Why didn't he just come gleaming like the light of a lightning bolt? Well, I think we realize if that had happened, we would have been terrified and ran in the other direction. But in order for us to understand what's really going on here, I want to bring us into understanding a little bit more about Luke 9 before we get into the text. So I want us to have an understanding of the context of this before we actually read it. And so if you have ever read the book of Luke, you will find that chapter 9 is a transforming chapter. Everything from chapter 9 on changes in the book of Luke. Before chapter 9 in the book of Luke, Jesus has been teaching, collecting disciples, doing all of these things, wonderful things. The disciples are excited, everything is going well. And then we hit chapter 9. And in chapter 9, it starts out well. In chapter 9, in the beginning, Jesus has called the 12 disciples together. He has given them power and authority, and he is sending them out into the world. He's sending them out to preach and teach, to send out demons, to do healings, to do all of these things. And the 12 go out, and it goes well for them. They come back and they share with Jesus all these wonderful things that have happened. And then they go down to Bethsaida and there's teaching that occurs. And all of these people come. And then we run into the feeding of the 5,000, another incredible miracle. Things are still going really well. And then we have the confession of Peter. Who do you say that I am? And Peter says it so well, you are the Christ. And then there's this change. Because as soon as Peter declares it, as soon as everything is going so well, Jesus says this starting in 21. Jesus strictly warned them not to tell this to anyone, that he was the Christ. And then he said, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and he must be killed, and on the third day be raised to life. Whoa, that's a change. He goes on and he says this. If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me will save it. Whoa. Now all of a sudden we're talking about death and losing your life, and how does losing your life save your life? And if you want to save your life, you're going to lose it? What? Very confusing. What good is it for a man to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit his very self? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in his glory and in the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. I tell you the truth, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the kingdom of God. What do you think the disciples were doing when they heard those words? I mean, It'd been going so well. They had driven out demons. They had been preaching. They had been doing healings. They had just seen this incredible healing of the feeding of the 5,000. And now all of a sudden Jesus says, I'm going to die. What? Now he also says, but I'm going to be raised again in 3 days. But do you think they heard that part? Peter already witnesses, you are the Christ. I'm sure the next few days were filled with all sorts of conversations. What do you think he meant? What was he talking about? Could that really happen? There had to be confusion among the group. And it's in this setting that we come to today's text. It's in this setting that we begin to hear these words and see this magnificent transfiguration. So I invite you to follow along. We start at verse 28. About 8 days after Jesus had said this, you know what he meant by this, that he was going to die and be raised again in 3 days. He took Peter, John, and James with him and went up onto a mountain to pray. And as he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. 2 men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Peter and his companions were very sleepy. But when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men standing with him. As the men were leaving, Peter said to him, Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what he was saying. While he was speaking, a cloud appeared and covered them. And they were afraid as they entered the cloud. A voice came from the cloud saying, This is my son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him. When the voice had spoken, they found that Jesus was alone. The disciples kept this to themselves and did not tell anyone at that time what they had seen. May God grant us understanding of his word. The disciples have heard the confusing message that Jesus is going to die, but then 3 days later be raised to life. They've been in a state of confusion. Wait a minute. If you're the Christ, you can't die. What does that mean? And it's in this moment that Jesus shows them something that will encourage them for the rest of their life. Have you ever received something from God that encouraged you? Have you ever received something from God that changed you, changed your understanding of the world around you? Because that's what's happened to Peter and James and John. Their entire world has just been changed. Because they have seen Jesus in his glory. They have seen the divine. They're used to the mortal. But now they have seen the divine. They have seen Jesus the way he is, fully man and fully God. Man, what an image that would be. It changed everything. Do you think they went back to the conversation about, what's he mean he's going to die? No. I'll bet in that moment there was nothing about his death. In that moment, all Peter wanted to do was stay right there. Listen, we'll build shelters. Let's just stay right here. This is a good place. And I bet you've been in places like that too, when you've said, I don't want to leave. Maybe for you, it's been Florida when it's 86 degrees and there's a pool right there. Maybe it's you when you've got to hug grandchildren that you hadn't seen in so long, or see other family that you hadn't seen in so long. Maybe it was you when you finally heard the virus is dying down. Maybe it was you when you heard words that said, you're going to live. Or maybe it was you when you heard words that said, you are loved. Jesus loves you. You're special. You are wonderful. But I hope there's been something that has been in your life that has encouraged you. And if not, then maybe this story is for you. Because up until this point in Luke, although we have seen and heard Jesus say incredible words of teaching, we have seen him raise the dead to life, we have seen him make the blind see and the lame walk, all sorts of things. Now we're seeing Jesus as he really is, the divine. We may still not fully understand in this moment what it means that he's going to die. We certainly in this moment would not have understood 3 days later I'm going to be brought back to life. But now there at least would be hope. Because now you're like, well, wait a minute, now everything is possible. Because we've seen. Everything is possible. Because we have seen. And that's where these disciples would have been. Now, why did Jesus pick Peter, James, and John? I have no idea. Why didn't the rest of them get to see it? I have no idea. But I know 3 of them did see it. And I know that when one testifies, they're going to go, you saw what? But when 2 testify, they'll go, are you certain it wasn't a dream? But when 3 testify, you know it's real. We all saw it. We were not dreaming. Yes, we were tired, but it was Moses. It was Elijah. And you may be asking, did they have name tags? I don't know, but they knew. Maybe Jesus said, Peter, I'd like to introduce you to Elijah. Oh, hello. I don't know. And what would that conversation have been like between Jesus and Moses and Elijah? Scripture tells us they're speaking about what is about to happen. And why would it be Moses and Elijah? Well, we know Moses is the law. We know Elijah is the prophets. We know that the Old Testament points to Jesus. It prepares the way. I wonder if there was a part of them that was joyful. It's finally here, Jesus. It's finally here. It's all coming to a head. It's going to be glorious. Or maybe they needed to speak to Jesus, say, this is going to be hard, but you can do it. You're not alone. Even when they all reject you, you're never alone. We're with you. I don't know what the conversation was like. I love Peter. Poor man just opens his mouth always at the wrong time. At one moment, he's declaring, you are the Christ. At the next, he wants to build some sort of housing units to keep everybody in. Seriously? Can't you see Jesus with the eye roll? Oh, Peter. And then the voice. There's a cloud that comes. And it says they were terrified by the cloud. Have you ever walked into a cloud? Do you know what that's like? There's only one time I've really ever experienced that. So I was leaving Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary. It's a long name, but I always feel like I have to use it. I left seminary. And I had packed my car with everything I had in it. I was driving out to Yellowstone National Park. And I was going to work there for the whole summer, which I did. Incredible. But as I was driving, there was somewhere, and here's the funny part. I can't remember where it was. Maybe some of you will know. But there was at some point that I have left the flatlands. You know what I mean? And I'm heading for the mountains. And the car is going up and up and up and up. And all I can see ahead of me is nothingness. Because there is a fog that has set in. And I'm driving and I'm looking at that and I'm going, oh, there was a little trepidation. And then at some point, my little car, which was a little Honda CRX, as it was going up, all of a sudden it flattens, and right above me is the cloud level. I mean, there's like 10 feet of space and then a cloud level. Even some of the truckers are kind of ducking a little to see. And you can see the antennas and the tops of the other trucks as they're wisping through this. And literally, as you're driving, you're ducking just a little because you're like, oh my gosh, I've never experienced that in my life until that moment. And that's how we drove. Perfect vision until you got to about right there. And then it's nothing. Now, I did not hear the bells. There were no bells. But it was a beautiful moment. And after I drove a while in it and you get comfortable, then you're like, wow, this is incredible. And I think that's what it was like for Peter and James and John. At first they were terrified, but then they kind of relaxed into it, at least until the voice came. And then there's this voice that says, this is my son. As if they ever doubted in the first place, this truly confirmed it. And you know, this is the second time that there's a voice. Do you remember the first time? His baptism. And the voice speaks, this is my son. But I love the way the voice speaks this time. Listen to him. At least that's how I hear it. This is my son. Listen to him. What an impression it would have left on those three men. We are just about to enter into a time of Lent. This Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. If you have never attended an Ash Wednesday service before, I want to invite you to come. They're not very long. It's a shortened sermon. You can handle it. We will put ashes on you, but if you don't want it on your forehead, we will put it on your hand. We're not here to mess up your makeup. But we are here to remind you of your mortality. I have a friend who's a good friend of mine, and she's always like, Karen, why do you keep telling us we're going to die? And I always have to answer back, because you are. And I want to make sure you're right with Jesus before it happens. But Ash Wednesday, like no other day, reminds us of our mortality. From ashes you have been made, and to ashes you shall return. Nobody knows when, but we all know it's going to happen. Nobody gets out alive. Well, except for a couple people in the Old Testament, but we won't go there. But Ash Wednesday is special because it's the beginning of the journey of Lent. And that's why, to me, chapter 9 is also so incredible. Because then when you get into 10, well, actually, it's a little later in 9, it says that Jesus is resolute. as he moves towards Jerusalem. I like that word, resolute. It means that nothing is going to stop him. And after he has this conversation with Moses and Elijah, he is resolute as he heads to Jerusalem, which means he's heading to the cross, and he knows it. It just gets me every time to know that he knows it. And what's he do? He keeps moving. And as we begin the 40 days of Lent, and before you start counting, the 40 days do not include Sundays. Those are little Easters. We move into that with this vision, the vision of who Jesus is. So we don't have to take the journey of Lent in any sort of fear or trepidation. We can begin to look at our lives and say, Lord, where is it that we are lacking? Where is our faith too small? Where are our doubts? And help us in our unbelief. Where are the places that I have drifted away? Where are the places where I have been made somewhat just not resolute in my journey with you? Lord, convict me. Show me my sin. And show me how to stand for you even more. That's what the journey of Lent is all about. That's why the journey of Lent is a holy journey. It's like no other journey that we take. And there will be resources here from the church to help you. The Adult Discipleship Committee has already purchased devotionals for you, and you'll receive those at Ash Wednesday. Is that a bribe? Sure it is. But no, if you're not here, they'll be available, and we'll have them on the next Sunday too. But we want this to be a holy time. Because let's be honest, we don't know what we're preparing for. We don't know what the future holds. We certainly learned that through COVID. And maybe now we're learning that through Ukraine. I don't know. But I know every one of us in this room is sometime we're going to die. And that's why it's so important that we understand Jesus not as a prophet, not as a good teacher, but as the Christ, the Son of God. That's why the Transfiguration is so important. However you see Jesus right now in your life, look again and see him as he truly is, the way Peter and James and John have seen him in these scriptures. And be resolute as we move into Lent, as we move into Good Friday, as we move into Easter, and make this a holy journey for you and your family. Because it's not just Putin that we're worried about. Peter speaks again about what happened in 2 Peter 1, 16 through 18. He speaks again about the voice. It's this voice that rang in his head the rest of his life. This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. And my prayer today is that you will hear that voice. At the Transfiguration, the voice that simply said, "This is my Son." Listen to him. And may it transform your life the way it did Peter, James, John, and all of the rest that have led us to this point. The journey is about to begin.